Everybody. Okay, well, welcome everybody. So excited that you guys could join us today. Thanks everybody for showing up around the state. I'm glad to be joined here by a bunch of fellow Oklahomans, and want to also recognize Pro Tem Greg Treat for being here. Thank you so much, and Speaker McCall, thank you for your leadership, and so many other state and community leaders around our state. It was really important, and it took kind of a team effort to get this across the finish line. This has been in the making for years now, and I'm proud of the bipartisan support that made this possible. Sometimes bipartisan support doesn't happen every single day, as you might imagine, but every single Republican except for one voted for this bill, and every single Democrat except for one person voted for this bill in the Senate as well. So I want to thank House Minority Leader Cindy Munson for being here. Thank you so much, Leader. And Senate Majority Leader Kay Floyd. Sorry, did I say? This is the Majority Leader, okay? Senate Minority Leader and Senate Minority-elect Julie Kurt is here. So thank you so much for being here. Oklahoma joined just 12 other states that actually taxed groceries. So there were 13 states that taxed groceries. And to us, in leadership, the grocery tax was one of the most regressive taxes that we had. It affected people on the lower income bracket much more than people that made a lot of money. And so this was really a bipartisan support. I think had a lot of support all across the state. But because we have experienced high inflation, which means prices were higher and things were costing more at the grocery store for every single Oklahoma family. Oklahomans, they want to earn a living. They want to take care of their families. They want government to be limited and just kind of get government out of their lives. And on the campaign trail, when I was out in southern Oklahoma and in the speaker's area, a lot of people would tell me that they would just drive across the state line and they would buy their groceries down in Texas because Texas didn't have a grocery tax. Their taxes were zero there. And so I thought, man, that's kind of weird as you're running and you're understanding all the policies that make people do certain things. And so since 2019, I've been talking about eliminating this grocery tax to bring people back home here. So I get to deliver on that promise today by signing the largest single year tax cut in Oklahoma history. So it's just amazing. And I want to thank the leaders in the House, the Senate, by cutting the state's portion of the grocery tax. We're going to be delivering on real relief for real Oklahoma families. So with that, I'll hand it over to Pro Tem Treat.
Thank you, Governor. This is a big day for Oklahoma. The governor mentioned we were only one of 13 states that taxed groceries. We were one of 5 states that taxed it at the maximum rate on sales tax. We're eliminating that state portion today, and that's a huge, huge deal. Governor, thank you for your leadership on this issue. You've long been an advocate for this. Speaker McCall, thank you for sending us the vehicle to get this done and doing the work. Members of both the Republican and Democratic Party, thank you for the hard work of making sure that we could do this. It was a big, big day when you have all but 2 people vote for something on the Senate floor of this magnitude. It's a huge day for Oklahomans. It's the tax that will impact more Oklahomans than any other tax we could potentially address. So I'm excited to be here. This has been a long time coming, and I'm excited that we were able to deliver on this promise. Speaker McCall, you're up next.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, let me just echo, everybody in this room knows I'm excited to see us here today. This is monumental. It took a lot of work. First of all, I have to commend the members of the House of Representatives, my colleagues there, their perseverance on this over multiple sessions. Thank you for your dedication to this. And as the Pro Tem and the Governor have pointed out, this is going to help all citizens in the state of Oklahoma. And I think even regardless of a political party, that's what we're here to do. And so this is exciting, not only that we're eliminating the state's portion on the grocery tax that affects every constituent that we have in the state of Oklahoma, but it's such a bold and big accomplishment. As the governor mentioned, this is a really big tax to eliminate. I'm thankful that our economy is in the position that it is, being predicted to be the 5th best performing economy this year. We can do these things and to help people. And we know that that revenue is going to come right back to the state because we are providing inflation relief to the people through this mechanism. And what's going to help them do is combat the inflation that they're experiencing. We know that they're still going to spend those dollars to help their families. And I'm excited not only for today for this bill, but for the opportunities that we have the rest of this session to talk about other ways to help the people of the state of Oklahoma. I want to thank the governor of the state for his perseverance on this issue as well. I always have to, always want to commend my friend and colleague and the Senate leader, President Pro Tem Greg Treat, for his leadership on this as well. Just on this, but on everything. I want to recognize and say thank you to my colleague on the other side of the aisle in the House of Representatives, Leader Cindy Munson, and to my classmate, Minority Leader Senator Kay Floyd, for their work on this too. This truly is, I think, a win for everybody in the state of Oklahoma today. I would also we come here to do bold things. I will tell you, every session that we come back in February through May, and this being my last one, it's extra special. What you want to do, you don't want to waste the people's time. You don't want to waste your time. While you're here, you want to get big things done. This is a really big thing for the state of Oklahoma, because it's a big thing for the people of the state of Oklahoma. So thank you very much, and it's my pleasure now to introduce and call to the podium my colleague in the House of Representatives, Minority Leader Cindy Munson.
Good morning. It's not every day that we get invited to press conferences like this, so we're going to celebrate today.
Just vote with me more and you'll be here, okay?
We'll see about that, and I'm sure that'll be a fun photo that we see all over the media later today. I will say, though, I do want to thank you, Governor Stitt, for making this a priority. I think this, in the 2022 State of the State, this was the issue you mentioned. You got all of us standing up. So thank you for your leadership on this. But I do want to elevate the importance of the bipartisanship that has happened over the last several years, but especially House Democrats. There have been leaders that have come before me who have made eliminating the state sales tax on groceries a priority for many, many years. I want to applaud Leader Emily Virgin, who is my predecessor, who held an interim study in the House of Representatives just a few years ago, really getting serious discussion around this issue. So it's always been a priority, will continue to be a priority for House Democrats. Number one, to protect our revenue base. We've got to make sure we have revenue coming to the state so we can make sure critical services that are so important to Oklahomans are taken care of. But we also know that Oklahomans all across the state are suffering when it comes to inflation costs and high costs of basic necessities like their groceries. And so we have prioritized this issue. And so we're so happy today to join our colleagues across the aisle and Governor Stitt to celebrate what we already knew would help so many working Oklahomans. And we'll continue our efforts in making sure that any tax relief we provide helps those who need it the most. So thank you for being here today. And thank you for your leadership too. Speaker McCall, Pro Tem Treat. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. Senate Leader Kay Floyd, I am honored to be here, Governor. The Senate Democrats have supported tax reform for years now, and it's gratifying to see a bipartisan effort start with something so large and so important to the state. with the grocery tax elimination. We are going to continue to try bipartisan effort and continue to look at tax relief, not only with the income tax, but all the tax situations that we have in the state. Reform is critical. We can't just pick and choose. We need to look at the tax system that we have in the state with a holistic view and start reform and bipartisan, hopefully, just like we did with this. So we're very pleased to have been a part of this. We want to thank the governor again and leadership. Charles, and thank you for the upgrade, sir. Sorry, Kurt.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me come over here and sign this. Okay, let's open it up for a few questions back to the podium from all our guests here. Okay, you've got the leadership of the House, the Senate from both parties, and so we'll just open it up to a few questions.
Yeah, thank you. Since the House had passed this last session, the streamlined sales tax agreement, council had come together and changed the definition of some groceries. And so we were just bringing that in congruence with the current definition that they passed in November. It was just a true cleanup.
Easy now.
Yeah, if it's hot and you can eat it right when you leave the store, it's prepared food. And so if you go in there and they have put the ingredients together, they have warmed it up and serve it to you that you can eat almost like an on-premise tax on alcohol, it will be charged the full tax. If you have to go prepare it at home, then you'll get sales tax relief on the state portion.
This is a question for all three. Are income taxes next?
Come on, Greg.
Listen, we think we need to put Oklahoma on a path to zero. Like I've said always, when you have excess revenue, what are you going to do with that excess revenue? We're going to modestly grow government. We have to fund core services, and I appreciate what Cindy Munson said, that we would never put Oklahoma in a bad situation. We know we have core services. We know we have roads and bridges, and we have infrastructure, but we need limited government. We don't need to continue just to grow government to meet whatever revenue you have. And so when we have excess revenue, 100%, it should be automatic that we put some kind of growth in government in there to limit it at 3% or CPI index or whatever we want. And then the rest of it would be just gradually start giving tax cuts back to Oklahomans. And so I think over the next 10 years, and if we keep growing in the trajectory that we are, maybe we can do it quicker. Maybe we can do it in 5 years. But if we don't keep up with the states around us, we will get left behind. Iowa, Nebraska, Arkansas, all these other states are starting to look at that. And Oklahoma has been on a path to zero since the 90s. We used to be at a 7% income tax rate, and we've slowly cut it down, and we're at 4.75%. And so a quarter of a point is very reasonable, or a path to zero next year when we come in here and we have excess revenue. Then how are we going to give that back to the Oklahomans to continue the momentum? And something the speaker said I think is very important is this money doesn't, maybe it was at the pro tem or the speaker, I can't remember. The money doesn't disappear. It just stays in Oklahomans' pockets. So it will be spent in the economy. Every time we've reduced taxes, we've actually seen revenue go up. You guys remember, I love my charts in here. I don't know where my chart is, but every time we've cut taxes, revenue is increased. And I think we'll see no difference here because now Oklahomans will have more money to go to the sporting goods store or go to the bicycle store or take their family on a vacation or maybe stay in one of our hotels around our state or our parks. And so the money doesn't disappear. It just doesn't get washed through the government. It stays in Oklahoma's pockets.
Well, thank you. You know, we took a very measured approach on the Senate side of wanting to see what the February 15th numbers from the Board of Equalization were. And then we did the maximum tax relief we thought we could do by delivering on the grocery sales tax. Today's the day to celebrate passage of the elimination of the state portion of the grocery sales tax. We'll have future days to talk, but what I said, I meant. That we went to what we think is the maximum we could do this year and delivered it early. As you know, we have created a new transparent budget process in the Senate. The reason the date was important for us to get that done last week and delivered to the governor was so we can have a true budgeting process. If we didn't know how much money we were going to have to allocate in recurring and one-time monies, we couldn't have the transparent budget process that Oklahomans need and demand. And so that's the reason you saw me push my foot on the accelerator after February 15th. So we can have in the Senate the most transparent budget process in the United States of America. And we had to do that by knowing what our revenues truly were before we entered that budget process.
What economic conditions have to be in place for the state for you to be comfortable with an income tax?
Yeah, so we have our final numbers for the Board of Equalization. We know what we have to allocate this year. We were pleasantly surprised from December to February. We actually saw a modest increase. Now, part of that was because Service Oklahoma wasn't included in the December numbers. Inadvertently left out about $90 million. And then there was some forecast on sales tax growth in there, and then also an increase in GPT on oil and gas, even though the price is down. We live with the numbers out of the Board of Equalization. We have faith in the process and the people who make those decisions, and we use that to make the best decision on this tax relief.
Last question. Can you just reiterate when Oklahomans will start seeing this relief?
90 days from sine die. So whenever we sine die, we need to get out of the building as quick as we can so Oklahomans can have the most relief they can have.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. I'm so sad this is your last session.
Thank you. Hey man, how's it going? Good to see you. I didn't see you see kind this year.
No, I didn't.
No.
Washington, D.C.
Oh
yeah.
Hotels this year. So,
Hopefully they have it tomorrow.
yeah. Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Felony burglary, I believe it is, and then there's some other things that maybe run a little contrary to some of the criminal justice reform that I think you have supported in the past, trying to lower the prison population, things like that. I mean, there's even a bill that would make it a felony punishable 2 to 5 years in prison if you knowingly transmit HPV. And so I'm just curious if you have concern that the legislature is again looking at rolling back some of the efforts that you've supported in the past on criminal justice reform.
Yeah, you know, I'm very proud of our state. We are a law and order state. I've given our law enforcement pay raises. I've given our Department of Corrections pay raises. We're going to support law enforcement first and foremost. And then when I think about the second chances and how our system's set up, I compare us to other states. When I took office, we were last place in incarceration rates, okay? So Oklahomans think that's weird too. I do too. I don't think our people are any different than any other state. Why were we last place in incarceration rates? And so I've gone about to say, hey, there's some people that we're locking up that we're just mad at. We're not really afraid of. They're not a danger to society. So let's figure that out. And we've moved 10 spots. I've saved the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars by closing 4 prisons, 2 private prisons, just since I've been in office since 2019. So I'm not going to let us go backwards on some of those criminal justice things. There's sentencing reform that I want to get through this year as well, that I think we've been negotiating with the district attorneys that hopefully we'll get across the finish line. And then there's a real problem with some of this smash and grab and some of the things that are happening to Quick Trip and Walmart. And if you know that you can go steal something and it's under $1,000 and you're immune from prosecution, that's a problem. So I'm very sensitive to fixing that for Quick Trip and keeping those employees safe, because you talk about the employee safety issue. That's a big problem if they're trying to stop or trying to protect their assets, and then there's other further violence that happens inside those retail establishments. So specifically, I don't know exactly where the bill is, but I'm very, I want to help. I want to help our retail establishments make sure that we can prosecute, give our DAs the tools to get bad people off the street. Okay, but I'm not going to let it go backwards, and that's why we need sentencing reform. Sentencing reform. Think about this for a second. It's not fair for somebody to get 30 years in this county and to get 1 year in this county or probation, and that kind of stuff happens. So let's determine in our committees. What we've done is we brought all the groups together to say, what is this crime punishable? What sentence should this person have? And then let's have it more uniform. So let's bring those the flexibility or the scope of the punishment and kind of bring those in a little bit. And Texas went through that. And so that's one of the sentencing reform things I'd like to get across the finish line as we're making sure that we can punish these bad apples that are going into these convenience stores and retail establishments and knowing exactly what they're doing and stealing under a certain amount. But the other problem is if we go to $500, some of the tribal laws are at $1,000. So again, I always talk about that. We can't have 2 sets of systems. You can't have a Hispanic, a white person, a black person getting a felony for stealing something at $500, and Kevin Stitt, as being a member of the Cherokees, I don't get punished until it's over $1,000. That's weird. Oklahomans think that's weird. I'll continue to remind people we have to have one set of rules regardless of your race. It's like I'm in a twilight zone having to explain that.
Good morning.
1 year ago, Hamas brutally murdered nearly 1,200 Israelis and took over 250 hostages, including 40 American citizens. To this day, an estimated 97 hostages remain in captivity. Just a month after the attack, I traveled with Governor Abbott to Israel, and I met with President Herzog and Prime Minister Netanyahu to offer the full support of our states. And I am proud to say that the state of Oklahoma continues to stand alongside our Jewish friends and neighbors, both at home and abroad. In the last year, we've seen a troubling rise in anti-Semitic rhetoric and attacks across the nation, and especially on our college campuses. But we've held the line in Oklahoma. Oklahoma will always protect your right to raise your families in peace and live and worship freely. Oklahoma will always stand with the Jewish people and defend religious freedoms. God bless those affected, and may God continue to bless the great state of Oklahoma. So I was really excited to get that one done. We set up the framework for business courts. And you've heard me talk about that before. And for Oklahomans that haven't heard me, I want Oklahoma to be the most business-friendly state in the country. And if we do that, that is going to help our economy. That's going to help education, healthcare, infrastructure. It's going to help our state grow. It's going to help wages increase. And so we just put the framework together for business courts. We're seeing other states stumble. You see what's happening with President Trump and the court system in New York, which I think this is going to have a huge long tail with businesses fleeing New York when they see what they can do to someone up there in that court system. It's just unjust. It's unbelievable. And so you see Delaware stumbling, and I want to make sure that our businesses know they're protected in the state of Oklahoma from out of control weaponization of district attorneys, attorney generals. We want to make sure that people know that they're safe in the state of Oklahoma. Hello, everybody. Happy Sine Die to everyone. This has been it's great. This is our last press conference of the year, and so I've enjoyed chatting with everybody every Friday and getting to know everybody better. And so hopefully it's been helpful for you. I'm still disappointed. As you know, there was a couple of nominees that didn't get over the finish line. And so I think that's something that Oklahomans need to understand. There's some weird stuff happening on that. Heather Turner was a great Oklahoman, ran the Jinx Chamber of Commerce. She didn't get confirmed as our Commerce Director. Dr. Corey Finch, medical doctor, great Oklahoman, veteran, did not get confirmed as the Secretary of Health and Mental Health. Deb Shropshire, she's also a medical doctor, has worked at DHS for, 15 years, did not get confirmed as the Secretary of Human Services. Susan Bergen, great Oklahoman, rancher, agricultural, just very, very successful agricultural person. And Susan did not get confirmed as the OSU new regent. Alex Gray did not get confirmed for the state school board or state education board, higher education board. Leah Gaddis did not get reconfirmed. She was already on the Wildlife Commission, didn't get reconfirmed to be on the Wildlife Commission. And then Audrey Cadigan did not get confirmed for the Libraries Board, which I didn't think the Libraries Board was a really controversial board, but somehow something happened on that board as well. But it's been a productive session. We started out the session by passing, which I'm really, really happy about. I was talking about it in 2019 when I first became governor, and it was to eliminate the grocery tax. As you know, we were one of only 12 states that taxed groceries, and very regressive tax, disproportionately hurting people in the lower income bracket. And so we're excited to get that across the finish line. That got done early on, and we're excited to get that implemented. Also had some of our priority bills get done this session. The first one was the Women's Bill of Rights, and that was kind of codifying my executive order. So I was really excited to get that one done. We set up the framework for business courts. And you've heard me talk about that before. And for Oklahomans that haven't heard me, I want Oklahoma to be the most business-friendly state in the country. And if we do that, that is going to help our economy. That's going to help education, healthcare, infrastructure. It's going to help our state grow. It's going to help wages increase. And so we just put the framework together for business courts. We're seeing other states stumble. You see what's happening with President Trump and the court system in New York, which I think this is going to have a huge long tail with businesses fleeing New York when they see what they can do to someone up there in that court system. It's just unjust. It's unbelievable. And so you see Delaware stumbling, and I want to make sure that our businesses know they're protected in the state of Oklahoma from out of control weaponization of district attorneys, attorney generals. We want to make sure that people know that they're safe in the state of Oklahoma. Choosing Child Worth Act was also a priority. The felony reclassification, this is a huge win for Oklahomans. Obviously, criminal justice reform is something that I've been passionate about since I came into office in 2019. We were last place when I was running for governor in incarceration rates. We incarcerated more men and women than any other state. And so we went about looking at some of our policies, and now we're 40th. We've saved the taxpayer hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars by locking up people that we're actually afraid of, not just who we're mad at. And so this classification is something that other states have done it. Texas went through this, but it was a huge battle. We've been working on it for years. And I want to specifically give a lot of kudos to Representative Osborne. He did an amazing job of working with district attorneys and working with all the groups to get our classification A, B, C, D on crimes. And there's still some work to do. but also narrowing the ranges of sentences. I think most Oklahomans would agree with me that it's really weird for the same crime to be punished 40 years in one county and 1 year in another county. So we're trying to limit those ranges and actually determine what the punishment should be, and then make sure that it kind of is it's across the state of Oklahoma. So C and D's, we actually got some ranges. We got the ranges kind of in line. A and B crimes are still going to work on next year, but Osborne did an amazing job. Senator Rader, also want to give him a lot of kudos and shout outs for working on that. Just did a great job of bringing people together. So really glad we got that across the finish line as well. But with that, let me open it up to questions and comments, what you'd like to hear more about.
With those executive nominations that are not confirmed, what happens now?
Yeah, so basically they're fired from their jobs. So, the governor appoints people. The governor's job, like Kevin Corbett, for example, was in the job as Secretary of Health for 5 years and then wasn't confirmed last year. We put Corey Finch up, Dr. Finch, and so he's been running that, advising the governor, meeting with that agency. And I don't know exactly how long he's been on the job, but he can no longer work. And so the governor will appoint another person. So we'll appoint new people to all these different positions. And but what's hard is it's hard to find the right people. And if anybody's ever hired someone, having to recruit and go through the interview process, finding the right people with the right acumen. And then, the Senate's job is to, confirm those, advice and confirm, I think is what it says. And so as long as they don't have criminal backgrounds and they generally are moving in the right direction, that's kind of the job, is just to make sure that they're good Oklahomans and they meet all the qualifications. It's not to pick on, and I mean, I'll move on to Commerce for a second. Commerce has been leaderless now for about 18 months. Last year they fired the person that we put over that. And so I don't know exactly what they're looking for, but my job is to nominate the very best Oklahomans, and I'll go back to the drawing board, and we'll hopefully get, in the month of June, we'll get some other people back up to run these agencies and advise the governor on these very, very important things as we're running the executive branch. But hopefully Oklahomans understand what's happening, and they have to call and ask their senator what they had against Heather Turner or Dr. Corey Finch, and what the reason was there.
Elaborate a little bit on your thoughts on the Trump conviction and how that relates to Oklahoma being business money or not?
Yeah, I think, and I've received a lot of texts, and as most people are, that was probably the conversation around most of the dinner tables last night, and it will certainly be today. It's kind of occupying a lot of the news right now. In one sense, when you hear somebody's convicted of 34 counts of something, you're like, man, they must have done something really, really wrong. But when you really drill down and you realize what's happening, people are starting to really question and start being.
Governor, you have a lot of decisions to make, I think, in the next 15 days. If I'm not mistaken, you decide to veto or sign or pocket veto as the term goes. Bill sent you in the last 5 minutes of session. You have a lot of bills. I asked you a little bit yesterday about there's commerce reforms, right? They want to split commerce into 2 divisions. And I'm curious your thoughts on that as it relates to, they will confirm your appointee, but they want to reform the agency. And then also, you're from Tulsa, you own land in Tulsa. There's a bill, Senate Bill 1424, that's been sent to you regarding liability for the application of poultry waste. And this is a major issue in the state. A question this bill would limit that liability, limit a landowner's right to sue if they are following an injury management plan by the state. I know you support agriculture, but I also know your business is based in the Tulsa area. The city of Tulsa is very opposed to this. And you as a landowner, I'm sure you may have thoughts on your own rights to sue if somebody has impacted your land. So I'm curious your thoughts on all those bills. Anything you may have decided on already, want to ask about.
So we have 14 days to kind of review them. I think we got 90 bills yesterday, something like that. Our team's going through all those right now. As far as the commerce bill, we'll dig into that more. But no, if there's great reform, and I think one of the parts of that bill is they put a committee together, 5 House members, 5 Senate members, to review big projects. It's a great idea. We have no problem with that. And so generally, I'm okay with that. But I think the real question is, why not confirm Heather Turner? So now we're going to go out and we're going to do our best to find the next Heather Turner. And Heather was the Jinx Economic Development, one of the fastest growing, cities in our state. And hopefully we can find another great person to put up and start running that agency until next May. And then we'll hopefully get the next one across the finish line. So I'll review that bill, but generally no problem with if there's better ideas. I mean, I've even considered privatizing the Commerce Department. Other states have done that and do a public-private partnership and really get that out of state government and pay people based on performance, right? So pay them based on what type of deals they bring into the state. So if there's reform and there's things that we want to do, we're generally, okay with that. The poultry bill, I've already signed it. Very excited about that bill. It's one of the reforms that we've been looking for a long time. And basically, just so Oklahomans know, what that means is if you have a permit to have a chicken farm, for example, and a poultry house, and this is what you do, this is your living, and you're following all the rules that your permit says, then you're immune from someone coming in and saying, well, you should have done something different. The rules weren't strict enough, or this or that. If we want to change the rules in Oklahoma, change the rules. But you can't have a business have a permit doing what they're supposed to do, and then come in and let a frivolous lawsuit take place and somehow put them out of business. That's un-American. It's not going to happen in Oklahoma. So for those reasons, I signed that bill. We had a former attorney general that sued the chicken industry, even though they were following all the rules at the time, saying they should have done something different. It took 13 years, and this attorney general brought this lawsuit back up. And so hopefully this will settle this once and for all. If you have a permit and you're doing what the state says you should do, in my movie, that's what you should be doing. And so for those reasons, I signed the bill. But it also increased the fines. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do, then the Department of Ag should hammer you for that, or you should be held accountable for not following the rules versus on your permit. So that's what that bill had said. I was glad to get it across the finish line.
Governor, thank you for taking my questions today. I wanted to ask about a provision in the State Department of Ed's budget this year that lawmakers said is supposed to target PR contract that Superintendent Walters has signed with the company that handles national media bookings. The agency says that it could touch a lot of different things, one of their operations. It's overly broad as it relates to promotion and public relations. So I'm just curious if you were concerned to see something like that included in the budget, if that's something you would want to put stop to. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, we're in the weeds, and I always try to explain to Oklahoma what's happening. But generally, if someone's using state resources, not generally, if someone's using state resources for self-promotion, that's wrong. We want to stop that. My first executive order when I came into office in 2019 was to ban lobbyists from state agencies hiring lobbyists. So I may do another executive order to stop state agencies from hiring outside PR firms. I don't like it. But I also don't like picking on one executive agency or one Department of Education. And if there's a rule that's good for one agency, maybe let's have it across the board for all state agencies. And so let's not pick on just one agency. So we're still reviewing that. It's part of the budget. It's part in some kind of limits bill. And so we're looking at that. I know that was a very controversial piece of legislation on the floor. So we're still reviewing it. But there's no possible way I want state dollars being spent to promote. And if you've got a comms department in your shop, in your state agency, why don't we hire PR firms? I think it's a waste of taxpayer money all across the board.
Speaking of controversies in the education department, you're probably aware that the Board of Education approved several administrative rules proposals. The legislature did not bring them up for, neither the House nor the Senate brought them up for a vote. That's a policy you to determine if they're approved or disapproved. What do you think about that? When might you decide or act on that?
I think on those, and that it comes to me in a resolution format, so we have longer than the 15 days to act on them. So we have, I think, 20, 25 days or so. We're still reviewing all those, but I know that we all want to improve education. We believe in accountability, but as far as the details of those bills, I'm still going through those. Our teams are going through them. Yeah, the legislature did not act on them, and so those are on our desk, and we'll have a response here over the next 20 days or so.
Yesterday, House Democrats criticized the budget, saying you left $1 billion on the table that they could have.
The Democrats said we wanted to spend another $1 billion. Is that what you're saying?
That's what they said. They said we left $1 billion on the table. Do you have plans to? The income tax cut did not make it across. Do you have plans to call them back in for a special session? Or are you waiting, new leadership in the House and Senate next year waiting?
If I could call the Democrats back in and get a tax cut, I would do that tomorrow. But I find it interesting that the Democrats are saying we left $1 billion on the table. Listen, government's not the answer. Actually, most of the time, government is the problem. We want to get government out of people's lives, creating more government. You guys have heard my speech on this all the time. So no, we did not. We overspent again. We've got to keep spending around where our revenue is, but we also have to we've got to keep a healthy savings account so we don't put ourselves in a bad situation. So yeah, I'm sure politicians can think of 100 things to spend taxpayers' money on. I'm not one of those. I think we should give that back to the taxpayer in the form of a tax cut. And I would. Why don't we ask those same Democrats what do they want to tax people? How much is enough? How much spending is enough? And so we still spent too much, but so happy that we still have a great savings account. Our economy's booming. We passed some great legislation to continue this momentum as the most business-friendly state, and very optimistic. I mean, people are looking to Oklahoma because as much as we're spending, California's spending a whole bunch more than us, and so we're looking really good.
There's a bill before you right now. It looks to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, it looks to reestablish the Oklahoma-Israeli exchange, so to create a business relationship with Israel, having reference to Jerusalem. Are you familiar with that bill? Would you support it or sign it in this case?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that bill, but as far as our support for Israel, 100%, we support Israel, and anything we can do. They're our biggest and best ally in the Middle East, and the democracy over in the Middle East that they just think the way that we do, and we want to be supportive of them. So beyond that, I don't know exactly what that bill does.
Along with the AI announcement yesterday, the recommendations of the task force on emerging technologies, will there be a chief artificial intelligence officer and oversight committees to make sure the use of AI is responsible, especially with state agencies?
Well, in our executive order, we had every agency appoint an AI designee to kind of walk through and make sure we're coordinating the AI for that agency, and then we're letting our chief information officer know how we can implement AI through the agencies to make government more efficient. As far as having an overall AI expert, that's something I'll talk to the IT team to see if we need to do that. There's no plans that I know of to do that at this point. But yesterday was a great announcement. We have Google coming in to help us on workforce. They're training about 10,000 Oklahomans for free. And that's something all for our young people out there and for people watching. There's some tools that you can get retrained, and AI is an emerging industry that's going to continue to disrupt every part of business, whether it's manufacturing, agriculture, the education space, call centers. And the more you can get familiar with that, I think the better off and the more marketable your skills are. So I just encourage people and Oklahomans to take advantage of those tools, and that's certainly something that we're pushing throughout state government.
The House and Senate overrode your veto on Senate Bill 210, the police pension bill. Can you talk a little bit about your response to that?
Yeah, super disappointing, and I think Oklahomans need to understand this. It's a short-term win, right? So think about this for a second. I could have signed that bill and taken a victory lap and yeah, look, I'm supporting law enforcement. Everybody knows I support law enforcement, but here's the facts of that bill and what it actually does. There's already, if you're a police officer, you get 75% of your income for life. When you retire, you get 75% of it. Okay. They make some of the larger municipal law enforcement makes $116,000 a year. That's a lot of money where I come from. $87,000 a year you already get for life. Okay. This bill took it to 90%. 90%. So now you're going to get 90% of your income. The argument was going to help with recruiting. Let me ask you a question. If I can retire right now and get 90% of my salary, that incentivizes me to retire early. If I could only get 75% of my retirement, I would say, well, Sarah, man, we have to replace 25% of our income. Maybe I should work for a few more years. Yes, she would tell me, absolutely, we're going to keep you working. But if I can get 90% of my salary, it's going to encourage me retirement now. So that's on the practical side. But what people don't realize is next year, guess what? The firefighters are going to want 90%. The teachers are going to want 90%. Highway patrol wasn't in this deal. They're going to come back and want 90%. This is exactly what happened. There's a great national article on this that was talking about this exact same thing. California did this exact same thing. When their pensions were in good shape, they took them from 75% to 90%. Guys, if there's no limit on government spending, take them to 100%. How about 110? It's not fair that you have any deduct when you retire, right? Let's take them to 100%. The private sector can't compete with that, okay? And so the problem is we're going from 75% to 90%. So it's disappointing, but again, it's a short-term win. And when you have people that are politicians looking for the short-term win, looking for the endorsement from law enforcement as I run next time, then you vote that way, okay? And that's why Oklahomans voted for me, because I'm the businessman governor, and they know that I don't just go along to play the political games. And so I even think it's the best politics. I think Oklahomans understand they're too smart for those little flyers that get mailed out that say, oh, he's not for police, or he's not for this, or he's not for that. They know when you're fighting for them. And so anyway, it got overridden. That's the law. Now law enforcement, the municipal law enforcement, but more than that, the retirees, think about this. The retirees that wanted a COLA is like a cost of living adjustment. So let's say I've retired, and I retired 20 years ago. And when I retired, I only had 75%, and I get $45,000 a year. So that's what the salaries were 20 years ago. Well, occasionally I'd want a COLA. I want a 3% increase. Well, you can't do a COLA if the pension funds don't have the money in them. And so all the new guys that are 3 years from retirement or 1 year that are at the top of the helm that get to hire the lobbyists to come in here and pass this legislation, they love it. But all the retirees, they can kiss their COLAs goodbye for probably, I don't know, 20 years, maybe forever. Because if the pension funds take a turn like I think they will, then there won't be money for COLAs. And so anyway, short-term gain politically today, long-term problematic for taxpayers in Oklahoma.
On spending as well, funding for the OP conference is also on investment. That's taken a while to get anywhere with. Are they supporting other funding to get it across the finish line? Is that
It's the Pop Museum. Probably, so I think that's in the budget negotiation. So I agreed not to veto certain things that we agreed on, and I'll stick with my word on that. The museum in Tulsa, I think it was a bill last year. They're funding it this year as long as Tulsa can privately fundraise the matching funds for that. And so we're probably going to get that across the finish line. I don't know exactly where that's at or if I've signed that one yet, but that one's one that's probably going to go forward. It's part of that budget negotiations.
We promised not to veto the budget. We were talking specifically about the GA bill or all the trailer bills, et cetera. Could you still veto this bill that's going away?
We agreed not to veto the things that we agreed were in there on the, so if there's things that are added later on, yes, we think that's a fair game and we'll look at that closely. But the deal that we cut on that Wednesday is whatever was agreed upon at that point. We were not going to veto that budget in exchange for some of the business court, some of the business friendly items that we were able to get in the agreement as well. So we're still looking through that to see if was there anything added on that was not part of our agreement on the day we agreed to it.
That includes the education budget that was built. That's what was yesterday.
Yeah, I don't think that was in the original agreement, so we're still looking at that part of it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing today? I'm pumped to be in Milwaukee. This is going to be great. I just want to first take a moment to condemn the act of evil that occurred the other day and the assassination attempt on President Trump. We're just so thankful that the Lord protected him, and I just can't even imagine how close that was. And so, just in a few days, we're going to be putting him forward as the nominee for our party for President of the United States, and just super excited for that. So this reminds me, a couple years ago at the Democrat National Convention, there was a group of reporters that were running in, and they see this little boy over there, and he's selling puppies. And he's saying, "Come get your Democrat puppies here. Get your Democrat puppies." And the press is like, "Oh, a cute little boy," and they go on in. And 2 weeks later was the Republican National Convention. And the press is there, and they're running in, and they see a boy over there selling puppies again. And he's saying, "Come get your Republican puppies. Get your Republican puppies here." And the press is like so curious. They're like, "Man, I wonder if that's the same little boy that 2 weeks ago was selling Democrat puppies." So curiosity gets the better of them, and so they go over and they say, "Are you the same boy that was here 2 weeks ago selling Democrat puppies?" He said, "Yes, sir, I sure am." And they said, "Well, what changed between 2 weeks ago to today?" And he looked at them and he's like, "Well, now the puppies have their eyes open." Oh, man. Just making sure I was in the right audience here. But we're here this week to fight for the American dream and really our way of life. Our founders, the American dream meant freedom to worship, freedom to assemble, freedom to speak one's mind. It meant that there was no limit to what someone could accomplish. It meant freedom from the government, not control by the government. The American dream is really the belief that everyone is capable of anything he sets his mind to. That each of us is endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. That we all in America have endless opportunities that if we're willing to work hard for them. And now, nearly 250 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, it's time for us to reclaim that American dream. I love how Ronald Reagan would say it. He said, "Government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem." We all know that in here. A perfect example of this is in our education system. During the COVID pandemic, blue states across the country, it's so important we don't forget this, were bending to the will of the teachers' unions and were shutting down schools for sometimes up to 2 years. And as a result of that, an entire generation of students were cheated out of their right to an education for the illusion of safety. And in Oklahoma, we believe that you don't put the Constitution in the attic just because somebody in Washington, D.C. tells you to. States like Oklahoma, we put students first. We kept all of our schools open. And I was one of the only governors in the country that refused to do a mask mandate statewide. Y'all remember all the mask mandates? It was unbelievable. Nationally, public education has seen a 20% drop in language arts proficiencies a 37% drop in math proficiency. And even after seeing these results from these lockdowns, blue states are still deferring to teachers' unions. They want parents in the dark about what's being taught to their children. In red states, we call that stuff crazy. We're pushing back, and we're seeing huge education freedom choice movements across the country. In Oklahoma, we passed the very, very best school choice plan in the entire country. And now, every parent, regardless of income, has a refundable tax credit or a voucher to go to a school of their choice. And here's what I tell people. Listen, rich people already have school choice. They can send their kids to any school that they want. And if you were governor and you had to talk to the single moms that are trapped, or the single dads, or people without resources, and they're in school districts where their kids are getting a failing education, it would break your heart. Now everything's possible in Oklahoma. We also became the very first state in the country to approve a religious charter school. Okay? We're so excited about that too. St. Isidore is a Catholic school that's going to be set up in the state of Oklahoma. The American dream is making sure that every kid has the opportunity to get the education that best fits their needs. So let's talk about government control versus free markets in the energy sector. You know, in blue states, the government is trying to control what car you drive. They're trying to say what stoves you can have in your house. I mean, it's getting weirder and weirder. On day one in office, think about this. President Biden started putting up roadblocks to American energy dominance. He canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. You remember that? Okay, Cushing, Oklahoma. Cushing, Oklahoma is right in the middle of our state. That is the largest commercial storage of oil in the entire country. It's 100 million barrels. Did you know that there's already 2 pipelines from Canada to Cushing, Oklahoma? One of them's called the Keystone. The Keystone XL was going to be the 3rd pipeline. Okay, it is absolute common sense that the safest way to move oil and natural gas is through pipelines instead of train or trucks. It's just unbelievable. It all gets so political. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, is priced not in West Texas, but from Cushing, Oklahoma. And then the pipelines go on down to Houston and Louisiana to meet the needs of our citizens there. You know, President Biden has leased fewer acres of land for energy projects than any other president in history. I'll give you the stats. It's just unbelievable. Because of Joe Biden's anti-energy American energy policies, taxpayers are now stuck spending about $1.7 trillion in hidden energy costs. This is crazy because states like Oklahoma can meet the need of Americans and our allies around the world, in Pennsylvania and Texas and other states. Oklahoma, we're so proud of our all-of-the-above energy story. And I'll tell you real quick, we're number 6 in the country in oil production. We're number 5 in natural gas production. But here's what people don't realize. We're also number 3 in the country in electricity generated by wind, okay? We have an all-of-the-above approach. We're one of only 4 states that 45% of our energy comes from renewables. Okay, that blows away the people on some of the coasts that are just the green stuff, that they think about states like Oklahoma that are leading the way on an all-of-the-above approach. President Biden also halted, y'all see his LNG ban, okay? LNG exports, he's banning LNG exports from the U.S., which is really hurting our allies. It's denying our allies around the world access to clean, reliable energy. And it really drives our allies into the arms of our adversaries. Here's a news flash. Every country has to heat their homes and their businesses. They have to drive to work, take their kids to school. They need energy. And so they're going to get it from us, or they're going to get it from people that may not like us very much. I always talk about energy as a national security issue. Energy security is really your national security. Because the Biden administration has done everything it can to squash our domestic energy supply, the U.S. and our allies are less safe. We have seen unprecedented aggression from adversaries around the world. Nothing is more evident than when we watched Hamas' brutal attack on Israel on October 7th. Myself and Governor Abbott took a trip over there, and we met with Netanyahu, and we met with President Herzog as well, and saw what was happening. It was unbelievable. It'd be like at a concert in the U.S., terrorists coming in with machine guns and just mowing down our young people. We visited them in the hospital. It was the most brutal attack you could imagine. And here's the deal. By lifting sanctions on Iran, the Biden administration has made them flush with cash right now, and they're using it to fund terrorist groups around the world. Let me tell you something. A Trump administration would immediately put sanctions back on Iran and bring stability back to the region. The other thing President Trump is passionate about is reducing our reliance on China. Right now, China controls 60% of the critical mineral supply chain and about 75% of the manufacturing. And critical minerals, if you think about it, they go into everything from our smartphones to satellites in space to our F-35 fighters. In America, we have the workforce, we've got the technology. A lot of times we invented this processing technology and the resources to bring this supply chain back to America. We're leading the way in Oklahoma. We've made announcement after announcement because of our business-friendly approach. We just landed USA Rare Earth, which is the first ever mineral to magnet manufacturer in the U.S. And I encourage you to check out my op-ed I wrote in the Wall Street Journal last summer on this exact topic. And it was talking about America needs to have a strategic stockpile for critical minerals like we do in the oil and gas space. We need to set up relationships around the world in Africa and in South America to make sure that we develop those relationships because China is out in front doing those. It's no secret that the Biden administration has been terrible for our economy. And over the last few years, Americans have been choked by inflation. It's hurting Oklahomans, it's hurting Americans all over this country. We're spending 20% more on everything that we need. You know, when President Trump left office, inflation was below 2%. And in 2021, your average gallon of gasoline was $2.40 a gallon. Today, it's $3.50. That's causing everything to cost more. But for Democrats, that's not a mistake. They want more reliance on the government. They've taken programs that were supposed to be a hand up, and they've really turned them into a hammock where people are sitting in them. The deficit spending to fund these social programs has caused our national debt to skyrocket. And now, when you really think about it, we are spending a quarter of our income, okay? A quarter of your income is on interest-only payments. Right now, our interest-only payments on our national debt is more than we spend on our national defense. Just think about that for a second. You know, I like to describe it like this. When I graduated, I went to Oklahoma State. I got an accounting degree, got my first job in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I bought my first house right across at 8th and Harvard, right across from TU. And I spent $66,000 on my first house. I was pumped. I was dating my wife, Sarah, at the time. We've been married for 26 years, by the way. But thank you. $66,000 for my first house. My house payment was about $550. And I remember making my first house payment. I was 27 years old. And I looked at it, it was $550, and only $49 went towards principal. And I was like, what? And the rest was interest. But at least I knew that in 30 years, when I looked at the amortization schedule, that I was going to own my house at 8th and Harvard. Folks, we don't do principal and interest on our national debt. It's interest only. That means we're never going to pay it off. And it gets worse because right now they keep piling on top of it. So our revenue is about $4.4 trillion. You would think they would spend about $4.4 trillion. They spend $6.4 trillion, right? They're spending $2 trillion over what our income is. And that's just making it harder and harder and harder and harder for the taxpayers. But at the end of it all, if they control our education, if they control our energy and our economy, they'll next go after our ethics. You know, it's really already happening. We are living, I tell Oklahomans, I mean, this is like, I'm living in the twilight zone here when people think it's okay to perform sex change surgeries on children. They think that a child who can't get a tattoo, can't buy a gun or vote, but it's okay for them to have life-altering surgeries. They think it's okay to expose children to inappropriate sexual material regardless of their age. They believe that men should be able to compete against women in sports, hold records. I mean, we're seeing that all the time, like, hey, this dude broke this female swimming and track record. They believe it's okay for men to be incarcerated in women's prisons or chained in women's locker rooms. We know that's crazy, and it's not happening in Oklahoma, I'll tell you that. I was the first governor to ban men and women's sports. Thank you. The Washington Post called me and like, Governor, you signed this controversial bill. And I was like, it's really not controversial in Oklahoma. We know the difference between boys and girls. But I also had to sign an executive order to define what a woman was, to make sure that women weren't going into, or men weren't going into women's prisons, because we were seeing that happen in other states. You know, they know if they can break apart our families, that they can exert even more control over us. And, you know, we're seeing record levels of fatherlessness across our country right now. Today, nearly 18 million children are living without a father in the home. The statistics paint a grim picture. So 71% of those who drop out of high school grew up without a father. 71% of those that drop out. 66% of juveniles that are in state custody for some kind of problem grew up without a father. So in Oklahoma, we're tackling that. We're promoting fatherhood. We know that the best place for a kid is at home with their mom and their dad. And in red states, we're fighting for families so they can keep fighting for the American dream. And you guys are here today because you believe in freedoms, not government control. You know that there's hope in that American dream, and it is worth all of us fighting for. So I just thank y'all so much. You are the leaders of your community. You're here at the Heritage Foundation, so you're making sure that you're here taking this message back to your states. And it's clear that the American dream can't survive another 4 years of Joe Biden. That's why it's so important that we bring common sense back to the White House. I'm grateful for groups like the Heritage Foundation who are advocating for freedoms. They're engaging the decision makers and educating Americans about the most important issues that are facing us today. The founders of our country envisioned that there's no limitation to what we can accomplish, but it does matter who we choose to lead us. And there's only one choice in this next election. Thank you all so much for being engaged and for working to keep that American dream alive. God bless you, and may God continue to bless this great nation of ours. Thank you so much.
Have a seat. Happy Friday to you. No comments, just questions today. We'll get plenty of time for questions. So, welcome. I enjoy doing this. I think it's important to give access to the media around the state. Thank you guys for covering what happens. I think it's really, really important for citizens. I tell everybody when they come up here, and different chamber of groups come to the Capitol. And yesterday they had Broken Arrow Group and Jinx and the different groups come up here, and Blackwell, and I can't remember all the ones I've spoke to so far this year. But I tell all those communities, we have to be an informed citizenry. We have to know what's happening. And so I really, really appreciate you guys covering fairly and just putting the facts out there and letting them know what's happening at the Capitol and also what's happening in Washington, D.C. So thank you. We'll open up to questions. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you saw this. There was a man who was arrested this week for human trafficking. There were 8 people in a car. Police say that those people came from across the border. You know, the border was a big part of President Biden's State of the Union. what would you say is Oklahoma's role in helping these people and also securing Oklahoma families?
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody heard the question, but really about the border and the security. What can Oklahoma do? You know, several years ago now, I think 2 years ago, 27 governors put together a 10-point plan. We sent it to President Biden, asked for a meeting, and it was just absolute crickets. We believe that, and now you saw last night in the State of the Union address, the president trying to address it. I don't think Oklahomans believe it. I don't think Americans believe it, that the president doesn't have any tools in the tool belt. I met with Chad Wolf, the former secretary of DHS, and he's went through all the list of executive orders that are available to the president of the United States, the things that they had implemented when Trump was in office. Part of our ongoing list of things, it's really simple. Enforce the laws already on the books. And really, it comes down to remain in Mexico. And so basically, there's 28 ports of entry along the Texas-Mexico border. And that's why we just don't understand, why are they cutting razor wire, allowing people to come in the border, and then now saying, and so what they do is they arrest them, and then they parole them, and they say, welcome to America, come back to the court system. And then the president's trying to spin everybody in a circle saying, well, the court systems are behind, and we just need more judges and more patrol officers, and we need Congress to pass $1 billion funding bill or $20 billion or whatever their numbers are now. We absolutely can just institute the Remain in Mexico policy. We can enforce the laws. We can start forcing people to actual ports of entry. And I also always caveat this with saying this has nothing to do with immigration reform. H-1B1 visas, state-sponsored visas. I believe that the governors and the states should control what workforce they need. And we're not opposed to people that want to come here legally and want to better themselves and want to earn a living and pay taxes and be part of our society and come into our culture and work hard. That's what America's about. But you're pretty blind if you think that we can have open borders and we can welcome you into all the state services and all the federal services and all the medical care. It's ridiculous, and I think American people are fed up with it. So from our state perspective, we're doing all those things publicly. I was just in the White House and specifically talked to Secretary Mayorkas about these issues just a couple weeks ago. And we will send troops to the border again if Governor Abbott requests that. We did that last year, and we're willing to do it again. Yes, sir.
Legislation seems to be on track to provide $50 million in state funding to advance levee work along the Arkansas River. If that gets to your desk, would you sign it? Would you be excited about that work beginning?
So the question was about levee work, and if there's federal dollars tied to it, and there's a state match that's required to add infrastructure to the state of Oklahoma, then yes, we'd be supportive of that. I don't know the specifics on what that is, but deepening the waterway system is something that we're advocating for. With in 2019 when I first came into office, when we had the storm situation and those levees were barely held up. I know that we've been working for a while behind the scenes to replace those. And so if there's a state-sponsored match, then that's exactly what our savings counts for. That's why we have $5 billion. That's why we have to be fiscally conservative, because we need to invest in certain infrastructure projects across the state. And I'm never opposed to investing in infrastructure or things that are going to help our citizens.
Governor, would you support a rollback of criminal justice reforms such as those laid out in 786?
So the question was, would I support rollbacks of criminal justice reform? I've been a pretty criminal justice reform-minded governor. Since I took office, we've gone from 50th last place in incarceration rates to now we're 40th. We've closed 4 prisons. But when you talk about some of the criminals they've kind of wised up to what the thresholds are. And so we want to make sure that we're going to be a law and order state. And if I see retail crime, and if I see crimes at the Quick Trips and at the On Qs and at the different convenience stores, and we need to tweak some laws to make sure we can punish bad apples, then I'm absolutely I'm okay with that. So I don't know specifically on rolling stuff back, but we're also not going to criminalize. We're not going to just lock up people that we're mad at. We're going to lock up people that are stealing or damaging to society, or people that we're afraid of. And I think there's a difference there. We've got way too many people, historically were locked up on, nonviolent drug offenses. And that was one of the things that I tried to correct a little bit in the state. But there are some retail crimes that we need to figure that out. And if that's what you're talking about, I'm supportive of trying to figure that out. Yes, ma'am.
You and some of your cabinet members have filed a lawsuit after the AG's opinion regarding Tim Gatz. Can you talk a little bit about that, what you're looking to get out of this?
Yeah, so Secretary Blaine Arthur and Secretary Deb Shropshire and Shelley Zumwalt and I filed a lawsuit against the Attorney General, really for clarity. It's not adversarial. It's just we need clarity around this. To us, we think that the AG misapplied the law. This opinion is it's a head scratcher. And let me read you the plain language. Okay, I just want to read this for you. So here's what the statute actually says. A cabinet secretary may be appointed as a cabinet secretary from among the agency heads within the cabinet area. Okay? It's exactly what we've done. I'm going to read you one other portion. The appointment of a cabinet secretary who is also an agency head shall not otherwise affect the status of the other duties of the agency head. That's the plain language. And the Attorney General's opinion left all that out. So we think we win this. It's pretty standard. It's pretty normal. And again, I believe in efficient, smaller government. So why wouldn't I have Secretary Blaine Arthur, who runs the Department of Ag, be my advisor on agriculture issues, right? Why wouldn't I have Tim Gatz, who has worked for the state for 34 years and runs the Department of Transportation, be my Secretary of Transportation? And furthermore, when I first came into office, I looked at all the other cabinets that were set up by previous governors, Governor Bellman and Governor Walters and Keating and Henry and Fallon and everyone, and they've set them up the exact same way. So this is the first time an attorney general has tried to come in and pick on a cabinet secretary. And so we need clarity across the board. And that's why we need the courts to let us know, what does that mean? What does that statute mean? Which I just read to you.
Governor, what about Senate Bill 1196, which the House of Senators passed? Senate passed yesterday, on the way to your desk, and that would empower or authorize the Agriculture Secretary and higher education chancellor to serve with the cabinet as Secretary of Agriculture and Education. Would you sign that bill, or would that hurt your law case that you're seeking, your lawsuits that you're seeking?
Well, in our opinion, we don't need any legislation. And I'm going to read it one more time. A cabinet, okay, and this is Title 74, Section 10.3. Okay. A cabinet secretary may be appointed as a cabinet secretary from among the agency heads within the cabinet area. So what that means is within the cabinet area. So Department of Agriculture is within the cabinet area of the Secretary of Ag, right? Secretary of Human Services has several different agency heads within her cabinet secretary. And so that's the plain language. The other part of it is the appointment of a cabinet secretary who is also an agency head shall not otherwise affect the status of the other duties of the agency head. So we don't need any legislation. We think it's redundant. I haven't actually looked at the bill. I know it's out there. And just, like I said, the AG's opinion has created extreme confusion. And if we need to solve all of the cabinet secretaries, not just for me and the way that we operate state government, but the future governor. They need to know exactly how to set up the cabinet. If we can't call them cabinet secretaries anymore and they're just called advisors to the governor, okay, just tell me what the rules are. But stop picking on, great state employees that have worked in state government for a long time that the agriculture people look to, and the people in mental health look to Shropshire. She's a medical doctor. She's fantastic. And we just need clarity. And it's not fair to pick on these people.
Governor, you have an executive order that basically approve spending by agency directors. In that respect, how does that work for the ones that play dual roles? Do they oversee their own spending with no oversight?
You're talking about the cabinet secretary. Well, if you'll read my executive order, and I think he's picking out an executive order that's expired. It's not in place anymore. And so it's an advisory role. Our secretary positions are an advisory role. For example, Deb Shropshire. She runs one of the largest agencies in state government with 6,000 employees. She's a medical doctor. She worked in child services before I gave her this promotion once Justin Brown resigned. So she heads this agency up. Her salary comes from DHS, okay? I don't remember what her salary is. You can look it up. It's public record. She volunteers as the secretary on my cabinet, okay? She doesn't get any extra money for that. And she also then helps me oversee the other agencies that report up to that secretary. So again, it's pretty much how businesses operated. It's pretty much how other governments have operated. Most executives have a cabinet. The President of the United States has a secretaries of different areas that help advise him. If in Oklahoma all of a sudden something's changed and we can't call them secretaries anymore, we need to call them advisors. Just tell me what the rules are. We need clarity. So that's what we're asking the courts to do. And unfortunate that we're in this situation. We think we clearly win. I've just read you the statute twice. I'll read it again a couple more times if I get more questions.
There was some concern that the State Department of Education is not giving out bonuses from the teacher empowerment fund that you signed into law back in 2022. Have you had a conversation with Superintendent Ryan Walters or any lawmakers about it yet?
I have not talked to Ryan Walters about it, but I am aware of it. I've talked to a few of the lawmakers. I think our team has met. Hopefully they've come up with a resolution. I don't know. It's pretty much in the weeds on how they wrote the law and how the Department of Education is interpreting the rules. But it's our intent to get all teachers a pay raise. That's the big picture, and we think we'll be able to accomplish that. And then you've got people arguing about what a statute means. Sound familiar here? But the intent is, let's get this across the finish line. Let's stop playing politics. Let's get these teachers paid. I need the best teachers teaching in the classroom, and we've got some awesome teachers in Oklahoma, and that's why I keep giving them raises, because I want to make sure that they know that they're appreciated in Oklahoma, and they do such wonderful work teaching that next generation. It's such a worthy profession. And in Oklahoma, we're gonna appreciate them, we're gonna respect them, we're gonna make sure that they're paid market what that is in other states.
Do you plan to have that conversation with the superintendent soon? Because I mean, that's potentially $23 million that's at stake here.
Yeah, our team is working on it. It's moving through the process. And so if I need to call Walters today, I can call him when I leave here. But it's moving, and I think they're going to get that resolved in short order.
Governor, can you support efforts to increase the Board of Education to include legislative appointees?
I know that's kind of being tossed around in the legislation right now. Don't really have an opinion on that. I haven't looked at the board makeup or talked to Walters or seeing what that would do in with the board. But we believe that the rule tells the executive, when it's executive branch run agencies, that the executive has the majority of the appointees on boards. But then the legislature can also have appointees on the boards as well. There is a separation of duties where the legislature controls the purse strings, writes the laws, but the executive actually executed. And so you got to be careful there, having too much, execution duties through the legislature. But as long as the board's balanced correctly, there's a lot of boards with those type of makeups, and we're generally fine with that.
Okay, thanks,
So,
everyone.
thank y'all.
Governor Abbott, during the last primary, opposed a number of legislators who opposed school choice. And apparently, according to reports out of Texas, they were pretty successful. A couple of them come to house. Looking at the general election cycle in Oklahoma, do you plan to be that active in the election? Maybe do a similar track as opposing legislators who oppose school choice?
Well, last year during the election cycle, I think we were 100% on the endorsements that we made with state and Senate members. And so, listen, I'm never going to shy away from limited government, smaller government, the freedoms that we believe in, the free market principles, the school choice, the smaller taxes. So absolutely. I mean, if there's candidates that I think are going to line up with Oklahoma values and there's candidates that don't, then I 100% will play in the primaries and get involved and try to let Oklahomans know what I think. And again, this is the great thing about our democracy. And I'm not going to hide behind just saying, hey, yeah, they look to their governor to say, who should I vote for? I have it all the time. People call me. Who do you like in this? What does this person really like? And I'll continue to advocate for that and let Oklahomans know my opinion. I go on the radio all over the state. Once a week I was on the radio 2 times in Western Oklahoma this morning, letting them know, kind of giving them an update on what's happened at the Capitol. And I'll continue to do that and tell them what I think on elections.
All right,
Thank you.
Everybody.